Hello, I'm Colin Green and you are listening to Spike Pit. Today then, I've got 5 more of my favourite tips to help you win D&D. This tip then, perhaps a little bit controversial. I think it's important to pick the players in your group. That doesn't mean you've got sole responsibility for it, but I think there should be thought going into it. It's nice to just throw open an invitation to anybody who wants to join. How successful do we think that's going to be? I have to confess that's not something that I've actually ever tried, and I could well be wrong. I would imagine that if you're going to do that, you need to make people aware of how the group's coming along. So if you've got an open invitation out there, as people join the group, you build it so that other people thinking about joining can make their own judgments about how it's shaping up and if they think it's going to be a good fit for them. So perhaps think about group composition. I have it in my mind all the time as we're playing. What's the chemistry of the group like? Is it working out? You're never going to please all the people all of the time. And I think this is an area of gaming where things can get really, really quite tricky, and it's not something I'm comfortable with. I've never personally had to ask somebody to leave a group, and I'm thankful for that. But bear in mind, I'm not playing in a whole bunch of varied groups. It's usually just my home group, and we've been jogging along for years. So I'm not the best person for talking about this, but it's just based on stories you hear and things that happen to other groups. You wonder, is this something that could be avoided just by perhaps having some ground rules at the beginning, setting things out in session 0, maybe just getting together, playing a session and making clear that it's a trial session. And then the harder thing is, how do you introduce people into the group, into an established group? I think it's a lot easier to set up a group where everybody's new and you all start off from square one. Introducing people later on is bound to be a little bit more difficult, and I think it's something that just needs thinking about. Get this right and I think you're laughing. So what's my next tip then? Don't underestimate the amount of effort that goes into establishing a regular, reliable gaming session or campaign. I think maybe it's not even helpful to think of this in terms of a campaign. Focus on a regular session. If you can get a window in a bunch of people's schedule, then you are well on your way to being able to crack that lofty ideal of the long-running campaign. Give some thought as to how you are going to cover your bases. This is going to incorporate then a couple of key ideas. Firstly, you need to try as hard as you can and think up some methods to prevent the cancellation of that session. If you've got a slot carved out on a Tuesday night, do everything in your power to make it happen regular as clockwork. That way, the more times you repeat it, the more ingrained it gets into people's minds. They carve out time for it, and your game rises up in people's list of priorities. They know it's happening, you know it's happening, more people turn up. Now, we all know that cancellations do occur, but if you can be the person that overcomes some of them difficulties and really prioritises their gaming, if it's important to you, of course. If it's not important to you, well then you're not really gonna achieve what you're looking for, and that's fine, that doesn't matter. But if it is important to you, then clearly you're going to need to prioritise it. And ideally, and it comes back to picking your players, you want some people in your group that sort of share that level of priority. If you've got widely varying commitments in a group, then to me that seems like it's a recipe for disaster. And you hear dungeon masters typically they will lament at the commitment level of their players, and perhaps that's unavoidable, but perhaps it is a conversation you can have and sort of say, I'm putting a lot of time into this, I'm really committed. Is everybody else committed? Is anybody really bothered? If you get all your cards out on the table and have that chat, perhaps that will help with the consistency a little bit. So you don't want to be cancelling if you can help it. Now, we all have off days, so this is rolling into the next tip, perhaps. Plan for that off day, or plan for the unforeseen eventuality. So you're delayed at work, or you're just ill. It's good to have someone that can step in. For example, I'm getting increasingly busy the past couple of weeks looking for a career change. There's things I need to do. So DM Ricky, we alternate running every week, taking it in turns. And I last week thought I need to take a week out on my turn. I'll contact Ricky, see if he can step in and kind of cover my shift, if you like. That way, no cancellation. I know that I don't need to worry about putting in a kind of shoddy, half-hearted performance where I've not prepared enough. I want to focus on what I've got to do in the day, and I can't be concerning myself with Dungeons and Dragons. So a little bit of thinking ahead. Nice if you can do it. I appreciate you can't always, but he stepped in. So that's one contingency. You've got a spare DM, and this is common sense. The other one is, if you haven't got enough players, or you've got a crucial member of the group missing it and it's going to affect your ongoing game, well, have a contingency game. This gets talked about quite often, and I'm a firm believer in this. You can keep the session going, maybe with as few as just one other player, by running something a little bit different. I know Kevin Madison, buddy of mine, the Dungeon Muser, he has these things called war stories, and I forget his actual definition of them, but he uses them to fill in a session where they can't play their regular game. I have run like flashbacks, kind of in the manner of a prequel, so we go back in time and perhaps play out a bit of a scenario. One I did in Neverwinter, and it was the tale of how certain members of the group got together and began adventuring. It was, a couple of months ahead of the beginning of the campaign, and that was good fun. So that's something you could try. Another thing I think you can do that helps with a couple of things, consistency and preparation. That's as the session's coming towards an end, a conclusion, have in your mind to save a little bit of time just to clarify what players are considering next session. Not always easy. Like most things, it's very easy to have these theories. Putting them into practice is a totally different thing. And we're not talking about doing this heavy-handedly. What you're trying to do is just get some idea loosely which direction the game is going in. And it's not just for preparation. Like I say, I think it helps with consistency. People have got, perhaps like it might be as simple as a cliffhanger, or you're introducing some expectation of what's to come. It could be, you're tantalising the players with potentially this idea of great riches or great adventure, or something that suggests that next session is going to be the best session ever. And it sounds kind of lame as I'm saying it, but I do that. I think it does it keep people coming back for more? I don't really know. I don't think it hurts. Give it a whirl. If you're someone that doesn't do that, try it out, see if it makes a difference. It doesn't seem to me that it's going to have an adverse effect, unless you're really struggling with it, and it means that you're kind of having to do some sort of weird shoehorning of ideas, or you find that maybe you're being a bit too specific about next week's plan, so you're finding yourself kind of steering players or getting into the leading the player situation. Try it out. What have you got to lose? I think as long as you're not too heavy-handed, it's a good strategy to have, and it's just about being a little bit organised. Just save a few minutes, 10 minutes when you know you're getting to the point at the end of the session, just to have the chat. It's also a convenient point in the session for players to perhaps signal a little bit of what they're looking for. If they're looking for a fight, they might perhaps say, oh, we're going to find that guy and beat the living snot out of him, or you might be able to move it around into a little bit of a roses and thorns, what did you enjoy about the session, what would you like to see in the next one kind of discussion. I think it's a powerful little tool to have in the toolkit. Last one for today then. A quick tip, you've heard it probably a million times before, and that's not an exaggeration. Have a list of names, evocative, really good, tailored to your setting. Have that list super close to hand. If you wear glasses, you might consider sticking it on one of the lenses facing your direction. Alright, so I'm being facetious. Of all the charts, tables and lists, I think the one that I call upon most is the name list. If I had to drop everything else, that would be probably the last to go. Because if you're describing a scene and somebody asks for a name and you stall on the name, people are forgiving, but it can really break your stride. And I think it's for the referee who's hard on themselves, the DM who likes to kind of keep things smooth and fast. Nothing worse than stumbling over a name. So just have that name list and work on it, tinker with it. It can be so inspirational. A good name is absolute RPG gold as far as I'm concerned. And there you go, thanks for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spike Pit. A few of my favourite tried and true DM tips for you. Hope you find them useful. In the meantime, take care and I'll catch you later.